Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for pressing play today. If you're new to my channel, my name is Alexis. I am an aspiring author, currently working on draft 2 of my debut fantasy novel. In addition to writing a book, I'm a mom of 2 under 6. I've got 3 fur babies, 2 cats, 1 brand new German Shepherd puppy. Well, not exactly brand new to me. She's about 12 weeks old. I am married to the love of my life, and I also run a small business called Studio Lex. So, needless to say, I've got my hands full, and that is honestly a major reason why I decided to start this YouTube channel in the first place. No, not to add more to my plate, but I really wanted to create a space to inspire other people to chase their dreams and pursue their passions and do it even if they were super busy, because I think it's really easy to spiral into this place that, I don't have time to do anything that I want to do. I just eat, sleep, work, repeat. I'm existing just to survive. And while yes, that is a very real thing that people go through, myself included, I think it's important to make space and carve out time for the things that we really care about and the things that set our hearts on fire. And so I'm very much a practice what you preach kind of girly. And so I am bringing you along on my writing journey, on my journey to becoming a traditionally published author in the middle of the chaos that is my life. So I hope you'll stick around, and I hope that you find value from this video as well as my channel. So today I thought I would talk to you guys a little bit about how I am writing my second draft. This is something that I was talking about with my writing partner. She and I meet once a week. She just finished her first draft and started her second. I've been working on draft 2 since early July, and I'm about a quarter of the way through my novel now. I cannot take credit for any of these ideas. I have done a lot of watching of other YouTubers, other authortubers, booktubers, aspiring authors, however you want to say it. And one of my very favorite go-to channels is Christy Ann Jones. You may have seen her on YouTube already. If not, I will link her channel down in the description below. But I have been following her journey for the last year or so. She didn't just get a book deal, but she recently got a book deal. I believe her book is coming out next July, so that's super duper exciting. But I followed her journey, watched all of her earlier videos, binged them while I was on the treadmill. Remember, we make time. We got to carve out time wherever we can. And something that she talked about doing was writing her drafts from memory. And to be honest, when I first heard that, I thought she was crazy. And it kind of made me feel a little bit queasy. But then once I got to my second draft, I completely understood what she was getting at. Because for me, at this stage of writing, I am not ready to do any sort of line by line editing, like at all. I kind of tried when I was doing some minor edits, and I was like, nah, like I'm just not there yet. And that's totally okay. But at the same time, if you don't want to go line by line, then how do you look at your old draft and make something better and somewhat brand new? Because by the time I got to the end of my first draft, I was such a stronger writer. I had so much more clarity around my story. There was so much from my first draft that had to be thrown in the bin, that sort of thing. And so trying to read through my first draft, take bits and pieces of it, while also creating something new was daunting. It felt almost impossible in a sense. And so that's when I closed my first draft and I opened my new project and started with a blank page all over again, just like I did back in November of 2024 when I started this journey. And it wasn't as scary as I was anticipating it to be. It was honestly a relief to just open that new file and start writing my story over, knowing what I knew then after completing my first draft, having a better understanding of my story as a whole, understanding my characters better. And something that other YouTubers have said that has really resonated with me is when you do it this way, the important stuff will stick. right? You're going to remember the things that need to stay in the story. But otherwise, all the other little trivial details that may or may not make the story better can kind of just fall by the wayside. And if they work themselves back in somehow, great. And if they don't, that's fine, because again, you have the important stuff in your story. And so basically, yeah, I've just been rewriting my story from scratch, knowing again what I know now after finishing my first draft. And it's been really fun. And what's really wonderful is, even though I'm saying, yes, I'm writing my story from scratch, it's not from scratch in the sense of writing a first draft, because the story has already been brought into existence. I've already told myself the story through draft one. So I have material to work with in the sense that I'm not coming up with something, I'm not creating something out of nothing, right? I know who my main female character is. I know who my main male character is. I know who the villain is and the side characters who are integral to the story. Like, I'm equipped this time around. Whereas when I was writing draft one, I didn't know anything. And I'm very much a discovery writer. I fall right in the middle of plotting and pantsing. Like, I did a little bit of both. However, I would claim, sorry, I can't think. I would claim to be a discovery writer because that's how I figured out my story. Even though, yes, I did plot out my beginning, my middle, and my end, there was so much that I didn't know until my characters told me, essentially. Like, yes, I am one of those writers who 1,000,000% believes that my characters tell me what to write. And so writing draft two, again, I feel fully equipped in that way, in the way that I didn't when I was writing draft one. And so while, yes, it may sound crazy to say I'm writing my second draft from memory, it's really not. And then what I was going to say that I almost forgot was, yes, you're equipped with all of these tools. Now you have all of this knowledge, and you're not creating something out of fully nothing. If you get stuck, you can totally reference your first draft. At least that's what I've done. It just, now I am taking from my first draft only what I need, and I have a better understanding of what needs to be left. And so that's been super helpful, because there have been times where I've sat down to write and I'm feeling very inspired and I get into the flow and the story's coming to life. And then there's other times where maybe I get to a moment where I'm like, wait, like, should I add something here? What did I write in my draft one? What was the direction I was trying to head? And then I'll reference my first draft and I can decide, oh yeah, I want to go the direction that I had laid out here. Or actually, I can see why that didn't work in draft one. Let me switch it up. And so, that's been super helpful to lean on. Especially the last 3 months. Again, if you're new here, I have not only been doing all the things that I already explained, but I've also been on a weight loss journey. And so for 90 days, I was in a really steep deficit. I ended up losing 13 pounds. I dropped 3 pant sizes. It was totally worth it. It was great. But I had no brain power. Writing a book on a deficit is very difficult. And I was not expecting that, but it was very difficult. And so it was helpful that I had my first draft to reference when I needed it. And now I am taking a break from my deficit and all my brain power is back, and I have just been in a writing flow again, which in and of itself is so wonderfully glorious. But again, even if you're having a hard time finding your flow, regardless of whether or not you're on a weight loss journey or not, you have something that you can fall back on. Essentially, you have a bunch of ideas that have been laid out in the form of a story, and you can take what resonates and leave what doesn't. And I think that is super duper awesome. Something else that I really love about writing my second draft from memory is mainly I am just trying to remember the important things, which, yes, I know I already said. I promise this is going somewhere else. Because it's not about remembering every single detail. But by writing my story from memory, in the sense of having a general idea that's a little bit more firmly cemented than, the random unstructured ideas that are in your head when you're writing a first draft, is that I find the writing to be a lot more fun. So I have the freedom to just get into a flow. I don't necessarily have to follow an outline. I don't have to follow my first draft perfectly. In fact, I believe that you shouldn't. Like, you should be creating something mostly new, unless your rough draft was just fantastic, which in that case, good for you. Mine was not. Mine was a mess. And I'm totally okay with that. When I finished my first draft, I was a little bitter, not gonna lie. But now that I am where I am in my second draft, I recognize I was just laying the foundation. I was just laying the groundwork of this novel. And so it's totally fine. And now in writing draft 2, there's so much creative freedom because, again, how many times can I say again in this video? Guys, I am sorry for that. Anyway, there's so much freedom because you've already done the hard part. You have created something out of nothing or out of abstract ideas or what have you. Now you have an understanding of what the story is and the potential of what it could be, the potential you were not able to capture in draft 1 because you had to tell yourself the story first. You weren't the writer that you are today, in starting your second draft. And so I have found the second draft to be so much more fun because I am able to pour so much more of my creativity into it because I'm not so worried about all the technicalities of figuring out the names of things or the personality of my characters or, the solutions to the problems that arise or those things. I mean, those are still things that come up. But because I've already gotten through draft 1 and have done the majority of the hard part through writing it, now it's more exploratory in the sense that, yes, I'm still discovering things. Yes, I'm still working out the kinks, but I know that there's a story already there. I don't have to wonder, can this be a book that's written from start to finish? I've already proved that it can. And so in draft 2, it's really just breathing more life into the story, giving it bones and muscle. And I don't really want to go with this analogy anymore because I think it could get really weird. But hopefully you're picking up what I'm putting down. It's just more fun. And yeah, I definitely still struggle with self-doubt. When I was writing my chapters 1 through 10, I just felt completely useless. And I'm realizing now, hindsight 2020, so much of that had to do with my struggle to think thoughts while on a calorie deficit and having everything on my plate that I currently do. You only have so much to give. And then if you're also not fueling your body all the way, it just makes it 10 times harder. So I recognize that. However, I definitely was feeling a lot of feelings writing chapters 1 through 10 and wondering if I had what it takes to actually see this whole process through. And then I went back. I finished chapters 1 through 10. I went back and I did minor edits, some structural things, some continuity things. And by the end of that experience, I was so thrilled to be jumping into chapter 11 because I realized this is a fun story. These are some really dope characters, and I'm excited for one day for readers to meet them and hopefully fall in love with them in the same way that I have. And it was just really cool because all through my draft 1, I felt so much imposter syndrome and I questioned, can I do this? Is there anything here? Is this story even worth telling? The whole 9 yards. And with draft 2, even though I have experienced those feelings more than I would prefer to experience them, if we're being honest, the ability to get over them quicker has been much more successful. And again, I think it really just boils down to, in your second draft, you're not proving to yourself that you can write a book. Now you're proving to yourself that you can see it through while you're kind of in this middle area of just making the book better and better and better instead of, maybe having the goal of simply writing a book. And what I mean by that is, for me, when I started writing Project Hourglass, I just wanted to prove to myself that I could write a book from beginning to end. And then that goal evolved into wanting to become a published author, to see this all the way to the very end. But what's difficult, at least for me, is now that I have checked off the goal of writing a book. I mean, I did that with draft 1, even if it's not something I want other people to read necessarily. I did write a book, and now with draft 2, I have to make it better. I have to make it flow. I have to, like I already said, breathe life into it. So then once I get to draft 3, I can make it that much better and hopefully get my book to a level where I feel it's queryable. I don't know if that's a word, but get it to a place where I feel that I can start reaching out to agents and saying, hey, would you take a look at my book? And I don't know when that'll be done. Like having the goal of writing just a book, I mean, once you write the end, you're done. But making a book the best it can be, there is no set timeline for that. There is no clear markers of completion. Now, I do think there'll come a point, draft 3, draft 4, if there needs to be, where I'll realize like, okay, I can only make this so much better. Okay, this is the best that I can make it at this point in time. Like obviously, once you query, if you're lucky enough to get represented, then there's editing with that and yada, yada, yada. That's not what this video is about. What this video is about is getting your second draft done and creating goals within writing your second draft that make sense for the season of writing that you're in so that you continue forward. And to be totally frank, I don't think I could write my second draft by going line by line or having a side-by-side comparison of my first draft next to my second draft. I think that would be way too overwhelming for me. And I mentioned earlier when I was listening to these other authortube creators talking about writing their stories over and over and over again, I was really intimidated by that. I was freaked out because all I could think was, wow, writing a book is such a big project. I mean, it took me 6 or 7 months to write the first draft of Project Hourglass. And so all I could think was, okay, if it took me 6 months to write the first draft, it's going to take me 6 months or more to write the second draft. And then you do the math. That's a lot of time. And yes, writing a book takes a lot of time. There's no doubt about that. It's just the way. But something I didn't take into consideration is that when you write your second draft, you're a better writer than you were when you wrote your first draft. Hopefully. And so when I started my second draft, the words came easier. I had an idea, a more cemented idea of what the story was. So the ideas came together quicker. There were questions that I had to ask myself during draft 1 that now I had answers for when I was working on draft 2, or as I'm working on draft 2. I am still actively working on draft 2. And so, I've been working on my second draft since early July. There were a couple weeks where I wasn't able to be as attentive to it because of surgery. I mean, it's been, July to August, September. 2.5, I will say 2.5 months since I started my second draft, and I'm already a quarter of the way through. And the writing is a million times better than the writing was in draft 1. If I continue at the rate that I'm going, which I'm actually hoping to increase now that I'm no longer in a deficit, I'm hoping to get back to writing about 1,700 words a day. We'll see how that goes. But if I continue at the pace that I'm at, I'll be done with draft 2 in the next 6 months, which is it's taken a little bit longer than my first draft. But again, the writing is 100 times better. So there will be less to fix. Then come draft 3, hopefully it'll go quicker as long as I don't leave a bunch of loose ends to figure out. But as I said too, and it's not a race. I am a competitive person. I am very much a goals kind of girly. And I'm a verbal processor, so you're listening to me like figure this out in real time. And if you're not into that, I apologize, but this is just who I am. So take it or leave it. But no. So if I get back to the pace I was writing before my calorie deficit, which was about 1,700 words per day, I can get about 50,000 words written in the next 30 days, which would be ideal because I'm jumping back into my weight loss journey after a month. I mean, okay, so let's say I knock out 50,000 words in a month. That is a stretch goal. I can acknowledge that. But let's say I do it. Then I'm 3/4 of the way done and it's only been 4 months. And let's say I jump back into my deficit and it takes me another 2 to wrap it up. Then boom, we're at 6 months and I've written 2 drafts of my novel, which is 100,000 words or more. It's about the size of Throne of Glass, just for reference. A year to write 2 drafts of a novel. Okay, then we jump into draft 3. And as I said, hopefully it goes a little quicker. Depends on how much work it needs. I mean, I could potentially be querying this thing next fall. Potentially. I know that's a major stretch goal. And I don't want to, I don't want to shrink myself. I don't want to be like, I know that's not realistic, because everyone's timelines are different. And it could be my reality. But just being the person who has binged all of these other authors' journeys, I understand that not everything goes according to plan when writing a book. And so I'm trying to walk that line of being super optimistic and excited and knowing my own abilities while also learning from others and their processes, I don't fucking know. Learning from them and being a student of the craft, being a student of the journey. It's really hard for me to strike that balance. But either way, I say all of this because I want to paint a picture for you that even though you may hear me say, I'm writing my second draft from scratch, I'm writing it from memory, it's not the same process as writing a first draft. Writing the first draft is the most difficult, in my opinion. And no, I'm not super experienced as a writer, but I am on my second draft. And I would say it's been significantly more fun. Yes, it's come with its own sets of challenges, but they're just so different than being a complete amateur, writing a novel for the very first time, trying to take a collection of thoughts and ideas and turning them into a readable story, creating these complex, dynamic characters for the first time and fitting them into this world with each other, with the conflicts that arise, etc., etc. It's just so much better. And that's why I keep telling people on social media, if you follow me on TikTok especially, I'm always trying to encourage new writers to just get to the end, get the words on the page, get your first draft done, because once you've done that, it's just going to be so much easier and you're not going to feel like you're just flailing in the water. At least that's how I have felt. Obviously, I know other people's experiences may be different. I acknowledge that. But I truly believe that if you can get your rough draft done, you'll go into your second draft just feeling like a brand new person, a brand new writer. So yeah, I'm writing my second draft from memory, and it has been wonderful. I am really looking forward to seeing how the middle of this book changes. I just got through what I would consider to be the first act. In my draft 1, it was my least favorite to write. I hated it. I was bored and confused, and I didn't know what I should include. I wanted it to be the part of my story that planted a lot of seeds and set up a lot of things to come down the road, yada, yada. And it was just difficult because, just for some insight, my first act takes place on a boat, not a big merchant ship, and it's awesome, and there's relationships and there's some cool dynamics, but I just couldn't execute it in my first draft the way I wanted to. But I'm thrilled to say that in my second draft it's been a lot more fun. I enjoyed it a lot more. I think it could still be refined come draft 3 for sure, but it had so much more clarity and direction this time around. And that in and of itself is a major win for me and my characters because they deserve only the best. So yeah. But if you're a new writer, whether you finish your first draft or you haven't even started it, this is a journey. It's not a race. And that's so cliche to say, I know. But truly, as someone who really loves to check things off her list to, accomplish things and all that, you have to be okay with the fact that this is just going to take time. And the only way to improve is by doing it, by writing. You can look up every writing resource under the sun, but you're still not going to become a better writer unless you sit down and write. And if you're allowing imposter syndrome to get in the way, if, you're procrastinating because you're scared, that's not going to benefit you. That's not going to help you move that dream forward. Hang on. I think my dog needs to go out. So 1 second. Okay. It turns out she didn't need to go out, but she did want out of her kennel, which is fine. It was about time to be done with quiet time anyway. So she'll probably pop up back here, and we'll see how that goes. She's kind of a hooligan. But anyway, what I was saying was, if you want to become a better writer, if you want to write a book, if you truly are serious about seeing your dreams through, then you have to pursue it and you have to put action toward it and time. It's not just going to fall in your lap. And I know that it can be really scary, and we're not really encouraged to chase our dreams and put forth effort towards them. Not really, anyway. But it is possible and it is achievable. There's just a lot of hard work between wishing you had the thing or could do the thing and achieving the thing. And I think that's the scariest part, is putting in the hard work and not knowing if it's going to, come to fruition, anything's going to come from it. At least that's something that I struggle with, especially when I watch some of these YouTube videos on here, is like, it's so hard to get published. It's so hard to get an agent. Authors don't make any money, blah, 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 blah. And all of that's true. I mean, it is. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, it's not true. People are just trying to scare you. Like, no, it's true. Like, it is difficult to get an agent, and it is difficult to get published. And most authors don't make very much money. But at the same time, we only have so much time on this earth. And I just can't fathom spending all of it wishing that I could achieve something and not trying to make it happen at the very least. Not, putting everything I had into this thing to see if I could make it work. And I recognize, like, I am different than other people. Not like I'm different, pick me, but like, I'm an Enneagram 3. And I realize that I'm very driven by goals and achievement. And I know not everybody's that way. But if you're watching this and you feel that tug on your heart to write a book, or really to do anything, this is applicable to anything. But if you feel the tug on your heart, why not try it? Why come up with all of these reasons why it can't work? The market's too saturated. It's too hard. I don't know what I'm doing. My family won't support me. No one's going to want to read my book. But you want to do it. So just do it. Just start. And, the great thing, too, about writing a book specifically is that it can be completely free. I personally bought Scrivener. It's a software, if you're not familiar with it, for writing books. But that was just because I wanted to. You could literally write using the free software that comes on your computer. So truly, at the end of the day, it's like, what is the real reason that you're not doing the thing? And if it's because you're scared of failure, I understand failure's scary, but the only way you're going to succeed is by failing until you do. Like, that's the truth of it, is all the people that you admire, be that they are authors or other people, I just had a brain fart, but all the people that you admire in the world, they failed until they succeeded. No one is an overnight success. They just picked themselves up, dusted themselves off, and kept going. And that's how I've been viewing my own writing journey. It's like the days, or sometimes it's weeks, that I am struggling with the imposter syndrome with my writing or with my content creation or what have you. I keep pushing through it because I know that, one, it's not going to last forever. It's temporary. Feelings come and go. But two, the only way that I'm going to get where I want to go is by pushing through. If I quit, if I throw in the towel, I'm never going to accomplish what I want to accomplish. And there is such a big part of me that just could not imagine putting in the work that I've put in so far and not seeing it through. And maybe you haven't started yet. Maybe you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, Alexis, I haven't even started. I haven't even put in all this work, blah, blah, blah. But you've been putting in mental effort. You've been thinking about it and thinking about it, and you've been putting it off, which is taxing. It's exhausting. It's mentally exhausting to resist something versus just taking action on it. And I know because I am a professional at that too. But I promise you, the more that you face your fears, the smaller that fear is going to become. And you are going to grow in confidence. You're going to grow as a person, and you're even going to grow towards your goals, which is super exciting. You know, yeah, I think our dreams and goals are worth it. And I know I started this video telling you that I'm writing my second draft from memory, and I am. That is true. And I wanted to share that and kind of share my thoughts on it and how it's going. But I also just want to encourage you today that like your dreams are worth it. You are worth it. And everyone has to go through the hard stuff to get where they want to go. That's not personal to you. The universe isn't out to get you. There's not something wrong with you. You know, I say this a lot. Just because it's hard doesn't mean you're bad at it. Doesn't mean you can't get better at it. You absolutely can figure it out. I mean, you figured out your life up to this point already. Why can't you figure out this next thing? You know? Yeah. I think that's what I have for today. I know that was a little bit of a tangent, but I hope you got value from it. I'm really excited to see where this goes. I am trying to allow myself the space to get excited about my book and about wanting to be a published author and saying more things like, I want to be a published author, and that's what I'm working towards. You know, and trying not to shrink myself in the face of being realistic so much. You know, there's a time and a place for that for sure. And I think it's important to manage your own expectations. But two things can be true at once. You can be realistic and optimistic. And that's where I enjoy my life the most, is when I find myself in the middle of both, you know? Anyway, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for being here. Again, I hope you got value from this video. If you would like me to talk on any other topics regarding writing a book, my writing journey, writing a book while having kids and pets and all the things, please let me know in the comments, or let me know where you're at in your own writing journey. Or if you haven't started yet, tell me why in the comments. Let's talk about it. Or at the very least, drop your favorite emoji so I at least know that you made it this far, because it would mean a lot. And you know how the algorithm is. It wants to see that you guys are interacting to help me find more people who would get value from videos like these. But again, thank you so much for being here, and I'll talk to you next time.